Folks, welcome back to Oscars at a Glance. All right, so the Toronto Film Festival just wrapped here over the past week, so that concludes the kind of big early festival circuit here, or I like to call it the VTT, which is the Venice, Telluride, and Toronto Film Festivals. So we are going to kind of quickly go through the films there that played and how they did, and kind of some early signs of maybe we'll look out for this, kind of films there and potential categories that they might get into. Okay, so starting with Venice, of course, Venice started with Downsizing. That was Alexander Payne's new film, and we've mentioned this one a couple of times with Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig and Christoph Waltz, all the big cast in there. And the reviews are pretty split. I'll go and I'll tell you the Rotten Tomatoes score here as well on all these 73%. So a lot of them are saying that it's probably not going to be the big film that everybody thought it would be. We had La La Land was the opening film last year. Of course, that went on to win more Oscars than any other film last year. But this one, maybe it gets in for like the screenplay, depending on the competition we get through the rest of the year of any films that haven't screened yet at the festivals, which, The Post is one everybody's talking about. There's a couple other ones in there as well, but that's kind of a big one that everybody's anticipating. It could sneak into Best Picture maybe if the competition's weak enough, but I pulled it out from mine. So I don't know where that leaves the film. I mean, it might get into a couple other categories. I haven't seen it myself yet. It doesn't open here until I think it's mid or late December, and even then it might be a platform release where they start small and then go big with it. I think it's Paramount's behind this one, and sometimes they do that and it works, like The Big Short or Fences did last year. Other times it does not. So like Silence last year started out that way, and it just didn't catch on at the box office. So that one, I don't have a lot of faith in it right now, but who knows? Maybe it turns around, and as normal everyday critics get to see it, and it goes into its big release. Maybe it does catch on, and it becomes a really popular film. Okay, next up, this is a big one, The Shape of Water. Now, this is Guillermo del Toro's latest, with Sally Hawkins and Doug Jones, Michael Shannon, Octavia Spencer, among many others in there. Again, we've mentioned this one a couple of times. But this one won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival, which was kind of a surprise to me. And I looked through the history, and unless I was completely wrong here, no film that has ever won that top prize at Venice has ever gone on to win Best Picture, which doesn't shape up, if you will, for Shape of Water. But still, at the same time, I do think this will probably be the, if not the most nominated film, one of the most nominated films come Oscar morning. I just, the visual effects will probably be there, maybe the production design, costume design, and stuff like that. And then, Sally Hawkins, I think, now that Victoria and Abdul, we'll get to that one in a minute, now that that one's kind of all over the place, maybe Sally Hawkins will take up that frontrunner spot when we get to November for Best Actress. I've heard she's phenomenal in the film, and she plays a mute, and somebody who's mute or deaf. I've heard. I don't know. I'll need to see the film itself when it opens in December. But I've heard the cast is great, the story's great, so screenplay is probably another big possibility there. And Guillermo might be looking at his first trophy for Best Director here. Okay, Suburbicon came up next. This is another one really faltered here, and I mean really faltered. It's 43% right now on Rotten Tomatoes, and just doesn't seem like there's a lot of love for the film. I mean, at first, the first reviews out of Venice were okay. Some of them liked it, some of them didn't. Then Telluride, it did not screen at, but Toronto it did, and Toronto's where the bad reviews really started to come in. And I think it dropped from like 60% to 43, or roughly around that on the tomato meter. I was kind of watching it. But, Matt Damon's in this one again. We've got Julianne Moore, who I thought would be a good threat for supporting actress for this role, but maybe not. Pretty much the only word I've heard on this as far as something that could make it in is maybe Oscar Isaac gets into that supporting category, but he's only on screen for like 5 or 6 minutes, so probably not. So that one might just completely fall by the wayside, and it's another strike against George Clooney, whose last film, Monuments Men, also just didn't hit it. Okay, Victoria and Abdul is up next. This one I was shocked at how mixed to poorly received it was. 69% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I've heard, yeah, Judi Dench is great. Some of the supporting characters are great. and that's about it. I mean, the rest of the film is really standard. It's a really play it safe film, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not spectacular reviews on this one. And again, I'm backing down from that original statement that Judi Dench was going to win her second Oscar. Probably not, and I don't even have her nominated now anymore. And again, like last year, we're seeing early signs that this Best Actress race is really gonna be really tough to get into and narrow it down to five choices. And one of those five choices could very well be Frances McDormand for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And this one sits at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it just won the People's Award at Toronto. That is gigantic for this movie. As a matter of fact, I thought coming out of Toronto, I thought it would be Shape of Water winning that one too, but nope, it went to Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which again I thought was not even in the cards for the movie. But it really did well. And Itonia was one. We'll get to that later. That I think was one of the first runner-ups. I forget what the other one was. We'll look it up later maybe. But this one is really just doing outstanding lately here. And yeah, all the critics have loved it. Some people are already naming it as one of the best films of the year. So this one, at first, I was thinking, well, Frances McDormand will get in, but that's about it. Now I've just put it in for picture. I've put it in for original screenplay. I don't know how much else it'll get besides maybe Sam Rockwell. I've heard he's also great in the movie too. He might get his first nomination for the film here. We'll have to see. And here's another one, Mother from Darren Aronofsky, and it did go into release this weekend. Didn't do so hot, and I haven't seen it yet, but 69% as of this moment on Rotten Tomatoes. But again, that's one that all the critics have seen now. And again, very, very split. And the what was it? The audience score, I forget what if it's called that or whatever it was, gave it an F. Cinema score, that's what it is. Yeah, they gave it an F, which is really surprising because I would think the people who went to see it, which would be big Jennifer Lawrence fans, big Javier Bardem has his fans, I would think they would have regardless of the subject matter, given it an A because they're in it. But nope, people really despised it, or at least the majority of people who voted. So, but yeah, I'll still see that one. But maybe Jennifer Lawrence is not in store for another nomination for this one. I wasn't huge on it. I thought, since the ads were really vague, I'm like, that doesn't always turn out for the Oscar voters. And now with relatively poor box office reception, at least here at first, we might have to just flush this one, its chances down the tubes here. Okay, so those were kind of the big players at Venice. Moving on, Telluride was up next. Battle of the Sexes was one that showed there, and this one I had really high hopes for. And again, we're seeing kind of mixed response, about 75%, and most of the reviews are saying, yeah, it's okay. It only goes so far in depth as far as the gender conflict and everything. But I've heard Steve Carell's good, Emma Stone's good, and she's another one that's going to vie for one of those spots for Best Actress. But yeah, I think this one will probably do a lot better at the Globes than it will at the Oscars. It's in that comedy race, and there's a couple films like Get Out or Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which are currently trying to campaign in that comedy race. A couple of them might get switched over. Like I think especially Get Out, even though yeah, there's some really funny lines in it. There's pretty much like one or two funny characters in the movie. The rest of it's all pretty serious. So that one, I don't know. They especially after The Martian a couple of years ago, after that one didn't, it won Best Film Comedy, but there was a lot of backlash to it and people saying you shouldn't have given it to that film. So we'll see. Maybe they do disregard that and they put it in the drama race. But if not, then something like Battle of the Sexes could get some pretty stiff competition there. But we'll see what happens. Darkest Hour. This is of course Gary Oldman's film where he plays Winston Churchill. This one very much reminds me of The Imitation Game from a couple of years ago. Not only that it's World War II and that it's a British production, but it's just the way that critics responded to it too. It's 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, and again, a lot of that credit is going to Gary Oldman's performance, which many have said is a career high for him. So that's one. Ben Mendelsohn has now been considered on a few sites for supporting actor, with Kristen Scott Thomas maybe getting, I think would it be her second nomination for supporting actress in this case? But and then Joe Wright, also the director, could probably sneak in and get a couple nominations here and there. Like I think that one will probably do better at BAFTA than anywhere else, but probably just because of the subject matter and everything. But that one probably look out for getting quite a few nominations as well, especially if it gets into like the costumes, production design, uh, the rest of those kind of smaller categories, maybe a couple of the sound categories. So it could really rack up in nominations. Let's see, Downsizing in the Shape of Water. We're also here at Telluride. A couple other newer ones that were not at Venice, though. Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. This is Annette Bening's new film. And basically, the word on this one is Jamie Bell is the one who steals the show, not so much Annette Bening. So she's another one who I think is in the discussions for Best Actress. And we'll see what happens. She didn't make it last year with 20th Century Women. But yeah, again, the big word on this is Jamie Bell for maybe supporting actor. First, They Killed My Father. This is a new film from Angelina Jolie, and it's the only one so far in her career that's actually gotten pretty widespread good responses. Like the first one, In the Land of Blood and Honey, people were really mixed on. Unbroken has its fans, but again, some people didn't like it. By the Sea was a total disaster. I think, yeah, this would make her fourth film then. And this one, 88% so far on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people have liked it, but there's a lot of controversy around the hiring, who was hired, and the kid actors and everything. There's a lot of controversies around it, which reminds me a lot of the controversies around The Birth of a Nation from last year. So maybe this one immediately gets shot down because of those, but I don't know. Not a lot of people are talking about it, so that could be the case here. Hostiles. This is Scott Cooper's newest film. And he's got Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike in this one, amongst a few others. It's a Western film too. 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty close actually to what Black Mass ended up at from a couple of years ago. Again, I don't know what this film's chances are at the Oscars, but I'm not going to bet heavily on it. Here's one I am going to bet heavily on, Lady Bird. This is Greta Gerwig's directorial debut with a big feature film. I think she did a short film or something earlier, but she's also the writer on the film, and she's probably going to be the best bet this year if you're going to get a female director into the Best Director race. I don't know if it has all the steam it needs yet, but it's definitely an option there. Saoirse Ronan is the star here. I think she is probably going to be a Best Actress nominee. Laurie Metcalf in the supporting category. Many people have now put her ahead to win that race. I think she's probably going to be nominated, and that's just having seen the trailer, which sometimes you can bet on that and it works. Sometimes you bet on it and it doesn't. But that's one, it's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, one of very few films through these festivals that have sustained that. And I think, and the trailer looked phenomenal. So this one, look out. We could be seeing quite a few nominations, including screenplay, actress, supporting actress, pictures, probably a good bet at this point. Maybe it gets in for director, maybe like a film editing or something kind of smaller like that. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But I think that's one we're going to hear from a lot more. And I think it will be, yes, in that comedy race at the Globes as well. That one it'll probably dominate. Wonderstruck, this is Todd Haynes' newest film, and 73% on this one. I don't know much about the film. I don't know if there's even a trailer out for it yet, but some people were looking forward to it, others weren't, so we'll see what happens with that one. But 73%, mixed to positive, is not always a great sign here. Okay, the opening film, now we get to Toronto, by the way, was Borg McEnroe. And this one, probably shouldn't even mention it because it's not on the calendar yet for anything in the States being released, but it is opening, I think, in Norway and a couple other European markets here, actually in the next few weeks. But 65%, Shia LaBeouf got really good reviews. Said he was really good as McEnroe, but again, it's not really getting a calendar released yet here in the States. So that one might have to wait till next year, or if it ever gets released here in the States. But 65%. So some people liked it, some didn't. Call Me by Your Name. This is the one I'm still betting on to be the Best Picture winner. It was at 100% from Sundance. Now it's down to 98%. Some douchebag didn't like it, but 98%, strong reviews. And this one, again, I have in for like picture, director, actor, a couple of the supporting categories there. Screenplay is a good bet. I think it's in the adapted category. And I have that one to really be the early front runner potentially here in the next couple months. Stronger, this is the Jake Gyllenhaal film, and 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people really like this one, and it's Boston Marathon bombing story, and I think Gyllenhaal, he's in the hunt there for Best Actor. I don't quite have him getting in yet, but that could change. Tatiana Maslany, also in the supporting actress category, could be a threat, especially after her Emmy win for what's the show she's on? I don't watch it, but I think it's one of the orphan show. There's like Orphan Black, I think. Yeah, I think that's it actually. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, of course. Molly's Game. This is Aaron Sorkin's directorial debut, and you got Jessica Chastain in this one, Idris Elba, Kevin Costner, Michael Cera, among many others. 92%. I was kind of surprised. I would think they would have a little reluctance to Aaron Sorkin there, and some critics just don't flat out just hate his writing style and hate him in general. But this is his first time directing a movie, and 92% strong reviews. And here's another Best Actress contender in Jessica Chastain. And again, yeah, that actress race is going to be crazy this year. But yeah, 92% is a good, strong start. I, Tonya, this is Tonya Harding, the skater movie. We've got 100% on this one. This is this one and Lady Bird, I think, are the only two 100%s. But they only play, well, actually, Lady Bird played at both Telluride and Toronto, and I, Tonya only played at Toronto. And it just got picked up by Neon Productions, who just released, I just saw it a couple weeks ago. Can't even think of it now. It's the one with Aubrey Plaza. Ingrid Goes West. There we go. Yeah, they just released that one, and they just picked up this one. And I don't think it's been slated for release yet, but I think that's going to change very quickly here. We'll probably see it sometime in November or maybe December. But this one, of course, all the word is on Margot Robbie as a Best Actress threat again. And yeah, again, another competitor in the Best Actress race. But I've also heard Allison Janney is a really big threat for supporting actress. Evidently, she's dynamite in the film. And again, 100%, it's a sign that it's one to look out for. Okay, another one that doesn't, to my knowledge, have a U.S. release date is Mary Shelley. This one, Elle Fanning was in, amongst others, 33%. It's one of the lowest rated of the films that played at Toronto. And I don't feel a lot of excitement around this one, so that one's probably not going to get anywhere. The Current War. Now, this one, I believe, does have the lowest score of any film that played here. And I've heard, this is Benedict Cumberbatch, Michael Shannon, Catherine Waterston, amongst many others in there as well. The strengths of the film are Cumberbatch's performance, which everybody said was fine. Michael Shannon, of course, nobody can say a bad thing about him. And the musical score, actually, by Thomas Newman, I've heard was really good. But everything else in the film was dull and non-exciting, and just nobody else really liked it. The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This one, it's Yorgos Lanthimos, I think is how you pronounce his name. But it's another one he did with Colin Farrell, and this one, 77%. It's it's got its fans, but some people just don't care for it. And this one, I don't know how it's going to do. I mean, I think it opens here in the next couple months, but if it's going to get into some of those top categories, it's got quite a challenge ahead of it. Okay, Brad's Status. This is the new Ben Stiller film. 83%. It did just open in limited release over the weekend here, and so far, it's one that's really clicking with those limited audiences. We'll see if Ben Stiller can get his first nomination of any kind here for this film. But he's about the best bet at this point. And as we look ahead, Best Actor, at this point, looks like it will be pretty competitive. So it's going to take a lot of other, big touted performances to falter before we get a slot for him. But, stranger things have happened. Okay, here's one that I think I said last time, but be on the lookout for this one. The Florida Project. It's Sean Baker's new film. He did Tangerines a couple of years ago, the film that was, shot on iPhone exclusively. And this time he's got Willem Dafoe, who's kind of turned into the best supporting actor, best bet at this point. 97% on the film. A lot of people really, really love it. And it is A24. A24 runs the best campaigns in the business, and we'll have to look out for that one. The Mountain Between Us is 71%. This is another Idris Elba one with Kate Winslet. And this one, pretty much the only word that's coming to mind here is non-starter. I mean, it comes out here in the next couple of weeks. I think it's actually the first weekend of October. And it's kind of another one of those survivalist stories like Everest a couple of years ago. But again, I've heard the performances are okay, but the rest of the movie is not so much. Okay, here's one. It's kind of interesting. Roman J. Israel Esquire. This is Denzel Washington's newest film. It's from Dan Gilroy, who came off of Nightcrawler, probably one of the most impressive first-time performances by a director and writer, and he's on this one as well with Colin Farrell and a couple others in the cast. Now, again, the big word on this one is the actor himself, Denzel, who people have said this is his best performance in years, and it's his most diabolical and somewhat evil performance. But it's only at 50%. Everybody says Denzel's the best part, but the rest of the movie around him just doesn't quite work. So we'll see. That can damage some actors sometimes. Depending on the competition as well. Because like I remember a couple years ago when The Judge came out, and Robert Duvall, best part of the movie, and he was really excellent in it. But the rest of the movie around him wasn't great. It was kind of a weak category in supporting actor, and he got in. But this could be a similar case for Denzel, and he did just get in last year. And if you look through Denzel's history of nominations, a lot of the time, unless it's Cry Freedom, a lot of his nominations are really spread out. Like Flight and Fences was 4 years apart, and Training Day, and the next nomination he got, which I can't remember right now, it might have been Flight, but a lot of those nominations are really spread out, so I don't know if he'll get in this year, but at least at this rate, the reviews are strong enough that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that one, we'll see how it plays when it actually opens. Okay, Andy Serkis's Serkis directorial debut is Breathe, and this one has Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy in the leading roles, and this one's 67%, so some liked it, some didn't. I've heard it's really kind of a soppy, by the numbers kind of film, and it kind of reminiscent a little bit just from the previews and stuff of The Theory of Everything, which of course went on to get Best Picture and various other nominations. So we'll see if the Academy's up to the sentiment on that one, but not really. Even Theory of Everything did have much stronger reviews than this though to get in though. Here's one kind of came up late was Brie Larson's directorial debut as as a director there and as an actress as well in the leading role. Unicorn Store. This one's also got Sam Jackson in it amongst others, and not a strong start. 38% on this one. Doesn't really have too many fans, but some people did enjoy it there. I don't know if it's going to be any getting anywhere for Brie. The Disaster Artist, this one screened as one of the midnight films, and this is probably my most anticipated of any of the releases coming up here, with the exception maybe of Last Flag Flying, and I do think I'm going to really love Battle of the Sexes. That trailer was just floored me. It looked phenomenal. But The Disaster Artist, they just actually had another preview come out. The movie looks like it's going to be amazing, just amazing, and especially if you're like me and you've seen The Room, which is what it's really all based around, it's going to add that extra level of excitement. If you haven't seen The Room, and you're seeing these previews, maybe you're not into it as much as everybody else is, but I think this is one 93%. A lot of people really love it. It did show at South by Southwest, back in March, so a lot of people like it, and I do think that it's A24. A24, look out! They always pull off those weird inclusions at the nominations and wins when we get to the Academy Awards. So that one, I don't know if it's going to go all the way for Best Picture. I don't know if director is going to happen for James Franco. He could get in for actor. He's one that I think could get touted around. And I think the screenplay is also in good stance because I looked ahead and the adapted screenplay race looks like it's going to be kind of all over the board here. So that one, maybe a couple nominations here and there, and I think at the Globes, it will be in that comedy category. I'm pretty comfortable at saying that. Of course, we haven't seen the film yet. But that one will probably get, 2 or 3 nominations at the Globes as well. Okay, here's one that is really fascinating. Mudbound. This is, I think it's Dee Reese is the name of the director. But this one's got Jason Mitchell, I think that's his name, from Straight Outta Compton. And you've also got Garrett Hedlund in this. What's her name? Oh, I can't think of her now. We'll get to it later, but this one, it's being distributed from Netflix, and of course, I think I've said this last time too, but the thing with Netflix is, when they released Beast of No Nation a couple of years ago, they released it on Netflix and in like 4 or 5 theaters in that platform-style release on the same day, which I think is what really caused all the ruckus and what really crippled that movie. Because looking back, that movie was one of the best of 2015. I thought it was absolutely one of the best directed. I think the best supporting performance of any actor that year in the supporting actor race would have been Idris Elba for that film. But the thing is, they shot themselves with the foot with that limited platform release being on the same day. And I think last year with Amazon Studios with Manchester by the Sea did it correctly. They put it in theaters, in limited release starting in late November. It got to wide release by late December, early January, and then they put it on streaming in February. That's how you do it. That's how you maximize, your stuff with your audience in the theater and with the box office. And then it's like, hey, all these people went out to see it in the theater. All these critics love it. Here it is on streaming for anybody who's subscribed to Amazon. And boom, I think even more people saw it when it got to Amazon. So, Netflix, if they can do that again with Mudbound, I think it's going to come out in mid-November. When we get to the release here, it's going to start streaming in late November. But that one, it's 97%. A lot of people love it, and some people are saying it will be in the discussion for Best Picture, definitely, if it can get around that Netflix hurdle. And if Netflix is smart, and I think they are, I think they've learned their mistake from last time, and they'll do the same platform release style that Manchester by the Sea did. They'll open it in limited release at the end of October, or maybe early November, maybe a week or two before it comes out on Netflix. Then it comes out on Netflix, everybody streams it, and all the voters, everybody who has Netflix who can, they see it there. And again, if it holds up with this 97% on, at least by the initial reviews here, I think it could really do some damage in multiple categories. Okay, and the last one here was Redoutable. I think that's how you pronounce it. But the guy who did The Artist, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I always get it wrong, he did this one, and it's based on a true story, I believe, of a French director. I can't remember anything, and I haven't looked too far into the film, but it's kind of based on the director kind of falling in love with his much younger lead actress in the film, and which sounded like a really, really fascinating subject to me, and one that I thought would really appeal to some of these Academy voters for sure, especially if it is based on famous French directors. And I think it's set in the 60s or 70s as well. But 54% on Rotten Tomatoes from a couple of its screenings. I think it was at Cannes as well. But that one, mixed reviews. I mean, I don't know if it's going to do much damage. I mean, maybe it does get into one of those slots for the foreign races, but we'll have to see here. Okay, let me just quickly. We were talking about it earlier, but back at Toronto for the audience award and stuff. Let's pull up those so I can read those off for you there. And it's always such a puzzle to get to what you want from the website here. So let's keep going here. Okay, here I found it. Okay, so I mentioned this earlier, but Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was the big winner here for the People's Choice Award at Toronto, with the first runner-up being I, Tonya, the second runner-up being Call Me By Your Name, which I think is great for that film. And we had The Disaster Artist was the first runner-up for the midnight screenings, with Bodied being the top one, and actually the new Vince Vaughn film, Brawl in Cell Block 99, was the second runner-up. I don't know about that one, but yeah, those are the big winners there. We already mentioned that the Venice Film Festival, their top award went to The Shape of Water. So we'll see what happens here. So just kind of some early stuff here. I'm going to talk about some of my early predictions here for picture and the acting races, director, and at least what we know so far from the screenplay categories. Okay, so first of all, I got to mention it again here. Dunkirk. Okay, let's, if you're, I don't want to, piss anybody off here, but if you're one of the Nolan supporters who thinks this movie's going all the way for Best Picture, start taking notes now, because we have seen this in the past 6 years. Pretty much The Artist was the last film to do this, but every Best Picture winner since The Artist has taken Best Screenplay along, whether that's in the original or adapted category, whichever one falls under. Argo, we had 12 Years a Slave, Birdman, Spotlight, and last year with Moonlight. So, and I'll tell you this, Dunkirk is a solid movie, and I think Christopher Nolan is probably a good bet to get in for director, and the film, with that would come Best Picture. But I don't think it's going to take any screenplay prizes. It's going to be in the original category. It's not winning any of those screenplay prizes. You know why? Because there's just like no dialogue in the movie. Pretty much, it's there's little snippets here and there, but it is not getting into that original screenplay category. And especially when you consider that the Academy as a whole does not vote on every single category. It's the writers branch nominates the screenplay categories. The actors branch nominates the actors in their categories. And I don't see the writing branch rallying around Dunkirk as one of the best screenplays of the year, especially in the original screenplay category where you've got very stiff competition. We'll get back to that original screenplay category here in a couple minutes. But I got to school you on this, guys. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen for Dunkirk. That's the first thing. Number two, even though, yes, there are a lot of people who went out and called the film a masterpiece, and it does have a 90, was it 92 or 93 on Rotten Tomatoes and all the other kind of mumbo-jumbo, jazzy stuff that you need to be a big contender here. But there was a big groundswell of people, including myself somewhat, who were very much taken aback by his style of filmmaking and by his, the way that he shot it and the way that it was edited and everything. So we'll see what happens there with that one. But I do think, yeah, it probably will get one of those slots for Best Picture. Nolan will probably get in for director. It'll probably get in for, cinematography is a good bet. Very well shot film. Production design is a possibility. Costume design is a possibility. The sound categories are almost a guarantee. They'll probably win both of them. Score is a good bet. They always love Hans Zimmer. The visual effects category could be interesting. I mean, a lot of the stuff, there's very little computer-generated effects, or if any, in the film. So we'll see what happens there. But this, it does kind of remind me a couple of years ago when Mad Max was getting all this attention, everybody saying that. But they were just saying it would just get nominated. They weren't saying it was going to win, like so many people are saying right now. But no, I don't know. I think, yeah, it probably will end up with like Mad Max number of nominations and a few wins here and there, true, and including, a nomination for picture and director. But Mad Max didn't get in for screenplay, and I don't think Dunkirk will either. So anyways, like I mentioned, Call Me By Your Name is one that I do have out front to win Best Picture at this point, but, we'll have to see what happens. The Shape of Water, The Post, The Florida Project, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Darkest Hour, Lady Bird, Last Flag Flying, and we also have Phantom Thread, that's going to be Paul Thomas Anderson's new film. If we have up to 10 films, those are the 10 that I have getting in at this point. But, another one that people are looking at here is Get Out. And this one was, I think it is the best film that's come out so far this year. And again, I've only seen up to the films that have been released at this point, so there's a lot of films that played at the festivals that aren't out yet, haven't seen them. But, and it is one that I think should be in a lot of categories, especially like original screenplay, which it actually has a decent shot of getting into. I don't know, it's pretty rare for the Best Picture category to include horror films. I mean, it's been a while. The Sixth Sense, I think, was the last one that I can think of that was, really a celebrated Best Picture nominee there like that. But, the Exorcist and Jaws and a couple of those happened, so, we'll see. But, it's not my strongest bet at this point. Okay, also, Mudbound. This is one, yeah, that if Netflix, if people either get over the whole Netflix thing or if Netflix does the release correctly, I think that one could do some damage. Downsizing, again, is one I did have in there previously, but, again, those kind of mixed reception kind of hurts it right now. The Big Sick is one, I think this is, again, one of the better films of the year so far, but, kind of came out too early in this case, being released in late June. But we'll see what happens with this one. But there's a couple other ones like Wonder Wheel, Woody Allen's new film, Ridley Scott's new film, All the Money in the World, which the first trailer just came out, and I thought it was, really, really fascinating and interesting and intriguing first trailer. I thought it was really good. But that's one to consider there. And if it can do it, I'm thinking maybe Wind River has a chance here too, because that one's my second favorite film of the year. And, Hell or High Water, at this point last year, not everybody was including it. Just have to mention it. And it has, at this point, Wind River has made more here in the States, money-wise, than Hell or High Water did. But not that, becomes the big dominating factor, but that's just something to consider there. Okay, into the director race we go, and Luca Guadagnino, I think is how you pronounce the director's name for Call Me By Your Name. I have him out front. Guillermo del Toro, I have in a strong second place. Sean Baker for The Florida Project in there. Steven Spielberg for The Post and Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk in there. Again, Joe Wright will probably get some nods here and there. I think I got him in for the Globes right now, but He's one that might do one. Get one of those slots. Paul Thomas Anderson's another one for Phantom Thread. And again, we're looking at some of these female directors. Dee Reese might be one. Greta Gerwig has some good shots here. Sofia Coppola did win Best Director at Cannes, which doesn't always work out, but we'll see what happens with that one. Oh, and then one more here is since Three Billboards is doing so well, Martin McDonagh, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's the director on that one, so maybe we'll see a little ground swelling for that one. Okay, lead actor, my 5 right now are Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, Timothy Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Denzel Washington for Roman Israel Esquire, and I do have Bryan Cranston in for Last Flag Flying in the Best Actor race. But again, I think it's going to be a crowded field this year. We've got Tom Hanks is supposedly going lead for The Post. We'll see how that one turns out. Hugh Jackman for The Greatest Showman. That one comes out Christmas Day. That might be kind of the Les Mis kind of type of vote there. We mentioned Jake Gyllenhaal for Stronger. He's going to be in this. Andrew Garfield was nominated last year, of course. They, sometimes they like to nominate you twice in a row for that one, for Breathe. Then, we've mentioned him before. James Franco for The Disaster Artist. I mean, that one, even though it's not it's a pretty unorthodox nomination, it's A24. It could happen. Okay, like I said, Best Actress. This is, I think, definitely going to be the most competitive race this year as far as whittling it down to 5. And then even still, maybe to select a winner from that could be very difficult. But Sally Hawkins I do have now out in front, and then Frances McDormand, then Saoirse Ronan, then Meryl Streep for The Post. We'll see what happens with that one. And then Jessica Chastain I have getting in for Molly's Game. But again, some of the other ones we mentioned here. Judi Dench for Victoria and Abdul. We mentioned Annette Bening for Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Emma Stone, Battle of the Sexes. And another one here that's coming out later is Wonder Wheel, Woody Allen's new film with Kate Winslet is the lead actress in that. And another one, of course, is Carey Mulligan. There, I couldn't think of her name. She's the lead actress in Mudbound. She Could Happen. And, of course, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya. Look out for that one as well. So there's, that's 8 or 9, maybe 10 actresses there to look out for. Okay, moving on to the supporting races here. At least in supporting actor, I think Willem Dafoe's a good bet at this point for Florida Project. I have him out front. And I think both Armie Hammer and Michael Stuhlbarg from Call Me By Your Name are getting a lot of love at this point. We'll see if that can continue. It's been a while since we've had 2 actors in the same film nominated in the same category. I think The Help was the last one to do that. Another one we kind of mentioned earlier was Ben Mendelsohn for Darkest Hour and Sam Rockwell for Three Billboards. We'll see if that one goes through. But Jason Mitchell will be in for Mudbound, and he's been placed in the supporting category. We'll see. At least from the trailer, it looked like he might actually be a lead performance, but we'll see here. And again, another one I love to mention is The Big Sick for Ray Romano. And I'm not a big fan of his just in general, but that was a tremendous performance. And in the supporting actress race, alongside him is Holly Hunter for The Big Sick. I do have her getting in, and I think I think she's tremendous in that film as well. But again, we mentioned Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, Kristen Scott Thomas for Darkest Hour. Now the rest of this race is kind of like we'll see what happens here because Mary J. Blige or Blige, I don't know how you would pronounce it, from Mudbound. A few people that have seen the movie have said that they really like her in that. We already mentioned Allison Janney for I, Tonya. She's probably a good bet. And no, what am I talking about? I do have her in as one of the nominees there. And then Hong Chow, I think, for Downsizing. Some people have already mentioned her name for that one. And one, I don't know anything about this one. It's called Novitiate. Melissa Leo's in that one. And I guess some people have seen it or the buzz is on her. But we'll see about that one. But right now I think supporting actress is the one race right now that's really empty, that we're kind of waiting for somebody to really break in and shake up the race when we get to like maybe late October, early November. Sometimes that happens, but we'll have to see. Okay, so we mentioned already the adapted screenplay category. Depending on what happens here, but I think this one could be a very, non-competitive category here. So Call Me By Your Name I have out front. Last Flag Flying I have in there. Sounds dirty if you use the other word there. Darkest Hour is in there as well. That was originally in the original category. They moved that one over to adapted. Molly's Game and The Disaster Artist are the 5 I have in there. And again, Mudbound, if it goes with the Academy, that will be one I think that'll get in for the adapted category. Victoria and Abdul maybe can get in there, but that's about it. I mean, the rest of them I just don't know if they're going to do it or not. So yeah, let's get back to this original screenplay category. Here we go. The Post, Lady Bird, The Florida Project, Shape of Water, Three Billboards are the 5 I have getting in. Then we have Get Out is going to be in competition there. Downsizing, The Big Sick, Phantom Thread, Battle of the Sexes, and all of these come for me before we get to Dunkirk, finally, which is, again, going to be in this original screenplay category. And then even if it works, Roman Israel Esquire is going to be in this original category. Wonder Wheel is going to be in the category. Big summer hit, Baby Driver. That was an original screenplay. We'll see if that one gets in. Wind River, we mentioned that one a little bit. I don't know if it'll go all the way for the nomination or not, or if it'll even get noticed by anything. But I'm trying to look here and see if I, Tonya, if that's either in the adapted or the original. Because that one, again, if it really hits, I think it's... I'm trying to look through here and see if they've classified it yet. Let's see if I can find it. Not seeing it yet. Okay, yeah, here it is. That one supposedly is going to be in the original category. Again, some of these aren't definite yet. But that's one, if it hits, that's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so people love it. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of a rundown of what happened at the Venice, Telluride, and Toronto Film Festivals. Some early picks from me, and a couple of things where I'm like, hey, even if you like this movie, there's a couple of things in the way. Dunkirk, sorry. But, that one, I won't be afraid to admit it. If it does end up winning Best Picture, I'll be like, okay, but it's the first time this has happened in a while, And as we kind of saw last year, kind of the big takeaway from Moonlight winning last year was the fact that we pretty much cannot rely on the prognosticators anymore. We can't rely on the Golden Globes all that much, even though it did win there. We can't really rely on BAFTA. We can't really rely on SAG. All these other races that for the most part just did not award Moonlight anything. With a couple exceptions here and there. And then also, a lot of the Gold Derby and IndieWire and Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, all these other sites that were kind of all saying, yeah, La La Land has this by a mile. La La Land's going to win this many. We just don't know anymore. And after that happened last year, Spotlight, it was in the race, and it was, the top film for a while, and then The Revenant took over, of course. But that's one, it just didn't go the way it was supposed to be called. So it's kind of like 2 years in a row where the prognosticators have, in general, been wrong, because everybody, including me, who went with The Revenant, a couple years ago, and then with La La Land last year, it's 2 years in a row where I've gotten Best Picture wrong, and so is just about everybody else. If you stuck with all those other sites there. So yeah, I was kind of looking there too. I closed out of it. Sorry, but I'm kind of reminded of a couple of things from 2015 at this stage in the race here, at least. And so we had Dunkirk this year, which is kind of reminiscent of The Revenant, where it's that big film that's going to get all the nominations, all the technical stuff. Could end up with a Best Director statue for Christopher Nolan. That one could happen. But it's kind of reminiscent of that a little bit. Then we've got Darkest Hour, which Imitation Game was 2014, but that one I kind of count in there. There were a couple other ones. I had this all thought, I had all this thought out beforehand, but now it's not coming to me. But there's, it's shaping up to be that way, at least at this point. Joy is kind of like The Post. It's a film that's going to come out way down the line, very star-studded, and a very awarded director behind it. But we'll see what happens with that one. Not to say The Post is going to be like Joy, where it sucks and it's one of the worst movies of the year, and I touted it early and it didn't happen. Could be, but you don't know at this rate anyways. But, yeah, that's kind of... There's a couple in there, yeah, that are very reminiscent of what happened a couple years ago. And, yeah, like I said, we've got the Florida Project. That could be this year's Moonlight, where it springs out of nowhere, and it's could end up with a Best Picture trophy. And and there's a lot to discuss in the next coming months, and a lot of surprises, I'm sure, in store. So next time we're probably gonna take a little time off here and get back to this sometime in October, probably middle October, when a few of these smaller films that have not screened at all the festivals yet have happened. The New York Film Festival is going to be starting. I think it's the last week of September here. So that one, it's a ways out, but I think Last Flag Flying and a couple others. I think Wonder Wheel is actually going to be the closing film for New York. So a couple other ones that we haven't mentioned yet that have not been screened are going to start getting screened, and I think we might have our lineup then, or pretty close to the AFI Fest, which sometimes brings in a few surprises. So we've got a lot still coming up here, even though it does seem at this point, as I've kind of said, we've had this pattern where every other year it seems that the Best Picture winner is decided by the time the Toronto Festival's over, and kind of the big winner there. It doesn't always have to win that People's Choice Award for Best Film and everything, but as long as it's in the discussion, it's going to be a good bet. Like 12 Years a Slave was a big, strong winner out of the circuits. The Artist was, we mentioned Spotlight. That one was. So Shape of Water is looking good at this point. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is looking good at this point. Call Me By Your Name is looking good at this point. So odds are one of those three are going to be our Best Picture winner, at least if this every other year pattern still happens. Okay, so we'll be back again sometime in October, probably mid-October, but we'll see you guys then with a couple Oscar updates. And it's just remember, it's still in that really pure speculation stage where we haven't quite laid down everything yet. So, yep, we'll catch you guys later.